The sun sets across the Sahara, casting a long shadow over a seemingly immortal empire. Millions of limestone blocks form towering pyramids that carry the weight of the North African sky. Down in Memphis and Thebes, colossal statues guard the silent riverbanks. This civilization locked its legacy inside monolithic rock and sacred incantations. It projects the flawless illusion of a divine, untouchable masterpiece. That sheer magnificence has forced humanity to bow in awe for millennia. But look past the towering stone temples, and a much more brutal question emerges. How did a civilization of over 3 million people avoid collapsing under the lethal heat of the Sahara Desert? The answer is not hidden in magic or divine miracles. Eternity was secured through a ruthless, physical grind. It was built on calloused hands, strict barley rations, and the sharp quartz sand that ground down workers' teeth in every single loaf of bread. We are stepping away from the mythology today to see how this colossal human engine actually stayed alive. Before we begin, please note that all the images and video footage in this episode were brought to life using artificial intelligence. However, every single detail has been meticulously researched and verified against trusted historical sources. We promise there are no wild fabrications here. If this is your first time watching, or if you have been here before but forgot to subscribe, please take a second to hit that like and subscribe button so you will not miss our next journey. If you walked down the dusty, sun-baked streets of this empire exactly 3,300 years ago, you would never hear anyone call their home Egypt. The locals used a very specific grounded word for their nation, Kemet. It literally translates to the Black Land. For decades, 1950s Hollywood epics and modern digital generators have painted these people with pale skin and European features. They show actors wandering around the desert in bright white robes looking perfectly comfortable. But movie studios rely on makeup, and computer algorithms simply repeat the historical biases of the people coding them. The actual environment of North Africa is entirely unforgiving. The sun beating down on the Nile Valley is not just a bright light. It is a daily dose of severe, damaging ultraviolet radiation. Under that relentless heat, possessing high levels of melanin was not a matter of aesthetic preference. This dark biological pigment was a strict, non-negotiable requirement to stay alive. A pale workforce trying to drag 2-ton blocks of limestone across the sand would not survive a single harvest season without fatal burns and heat stroke. So look closely at the real faces moving through the crowded markets of Thebes. Their skin holds the rich, deep colors of the earth itself. You see variations of burnt copper, dark brown, and the profound ebony shades brought by generations of families migrating up the river from territories like modern-day South Sudan. This was a vibrant, deeply melanated society, perfectly adapted to its harsh geography. We are too used to seeing ancient statues standing in European museums completely stripped of their original paint. They look like pure, colorless rock. But the craftsmen who originally chiseled those figures coated them in dark reddish-brown ochre to exactly match the living, breathing citizens walking outside the temple doors. The ancient Egyptians did not look like the bleached, weathered ruins they left behind. When a stonemason wiped the sweat from his forehead in the Tura quarries, his hands were the exact color of the fertile mud that gave this civilization its name. Kemet was a nation rooted in the African continent, built by African hands. The digital reconstructions that lighten these streets are quietly erasing the exact biological armor that allowed this empire to thrive for millennia. Before we even examine the food they ate or the heavy labor they endured, we have to look at the real faces of the people who built eternity. When archaeologists unearth the massive workers' cemetery at Giza, they do not just find bones. They uncover a silent, agonizing medical record. The ancient diet relied almost entirely on thick bread made from emmer wheat. It was the absolute core of their daily survival. But this everyday sustenance was actually a slow, physical trap. The dry winds blowing across the Sahara carried microscopic grains of sharp quartz sand directly into the open milling areas. As women ground the wheat against rough stone querns for hours, the grinding stone itself flaked off into the raw flour. Every single meal involved chewing a punishing mixture of grain and rock. You can imagine the harsh, gritty crunch echoing in the mouth of a laborer eating his rations near the Great Pyramid. This daily friction acted exactly like heavy sandpaper grinding directly against human enamel. Bite by bite, year after year, the bread wore their teeth completely flat. By the time a stonemason hauled his 100th block of limestone, his mouth was often a ruined row of exposed nerves and rotting roots. Contrasting, high priests inside the temple sanctuaries might have soothed their dental abscesses with rare medicinal honey. The common builders outside had no such luxury. They woke up, hauled heavy stone under the sun, and chewed their gritty food while enduring chronic, throbbing pain in their jaws. Authoritative skeletal remains pulled from the harsh, arid grounds of the Thebes Valley prove exactly how brutal this daily reality was. Severe dental wear and massive jaw infections were practically universal among the working classes. These untreated abscesses frequently turned into lethal bacterial infections that spread directly into the bloodstream. The men who raised the greatest architectural wonders on Earth were often entirely toothless and living in constant, agonizing physical pain before they even reached the age of 30. They survived because the Earth gave them grain, but that exact same Earth slowly destroyed them from the inside out. Leave the agonizing construction sites behind and walk toward the colossal stone columns of Karnak. Most visitors look at this sprawling complex and see only a house of worship. They imagine high priests chanting prayers and burning incense to appease the gods. But hidden behind those massive walls lies the Ankh, literally translated as the House of Life. It was not a sanctuary for spiritual meditation. The Ankh operated as the most secure, highly classified data center in the ancient world. While the common laborers outside believed the pharaoh controlled the Nile's floodwaters through divine magic, a different kind of authority ruled inside these dimly lit halls. The elite class of scribes silently directed the empire using a much more practical weapon. They held an absolute monopoly over the production of papyrus. This reedy plant from the delta was harvested, pressed, and dried into the world's most valuable recording surface. Without a steady supply of fresh papyrus rolls, the entire administration would instantly freeze. A scribe sitting cross-legged with a reed pen and a palette of red and black ink held more sway over a province than a general with a bronze sword. A scribe did not just write, he encrypted the empire's daily operations. The complex visual language of hieroglyphics served as a strict administrative code intentionally kept difficult to master. Only a tiny fraction of the population could decipher these intricate symbols depicting birds, eyes, and reeds. On those fragile scrolls, scribes meticulously maintained the land registries that defined every farmer's plot along the riverbanks. When the annual flood wiped out the physical boundary markers in the mud, the papyrus roll determined who owned what. They calculated the exact grain tax records for entire villages and archived highly guarded medical formulas to treat battlefield wounds. Knowledge in this civilization was never meant to be a public resource. It was aggressively guarded. If you could not read the painted symbols on the walls or the black ink on the scrolls, you essentially did not exist in the official records. A peasant could not dispute a harvest claim if the governor's papyrus stated otherwise. The scribes dictated reality because they possessed the only written version of it. They tracked the phases of the moon, recorded the heights of the Nile, and decided exactly how many sacks of wheat a town owed the royal granary. The staggering longevity of this empire did not rely on heavy limestone or golden shrines alone. It survived for thousands of years because of this relentless, centralized grip on information. They understood a timeless rule of governance centuries before any modern state existed. The men who carefully lock away the archives of the past will always dictate the order of the future. When the annual flood season, known as Ankh, arrived, the Nile River swelled and completely swallowed the agricultural fields. For 3 long months, farming became impossible. You might picture a peaceful society resting at home, waiting for the waters to recede. But an ancient governor understood a terrifying reality. A population of over 1 million people with absolutely nothing to do is a massive security threat. Idle hands and empty days breed unrest, gossip, and rebellion. The state had to capture their attention before boredom could turn into chaos. So the leadership initiated a massive empire-wide program of emotional management. This was the exact season when the pharaoh launched the largest construction projects, drafting tens of thousands of idle farmers to haul stones at Giza. But heavy labor was only half of the strategy. The state also filled the calendar with elaborate, weeks-long religious festivals. You did not just stay home, you participated in massive public feasts, watched grand processions of the gods, and felt like a crucial part of the empire's beating heart. They transformed forced unemployment into a period of intense religious devotion. Even inside the cool, dim rooms of small mud brick houses, this invisible control continued. Families spent hours moving pieces across the gridded wooden boards of Senate. It looks like a simple parlor game, but Senate was deeply psychological. As you threw the casting sticks and moved your pieces, you were mimicking the dangerous journey of a soul traveling through the afterlife. The game subtly reinforced the idea that success required both luck and strict adherence to the rules of the gods. Every time a player lost a piece, they were unconsciously learning about submission and cosmic order. Whether you were dragging a granite statue for the pharaoh or rolling wooden sticks on a Senate board with your children, your mind was constantly occupied. You were actively participating in Ma'at, the fundamental philosophy of truth, balance, and order. The state did not just dictate what people did when they worked, it carefully designed exactly what they felt when they rested. The 3 months of Ankh were not a vacation. They were a brilliantly executed psychological campaign to keep the empire perfectly united. We are often told that the ancient Egyptians hauled millions of tons of limestone purely out of blind religious devotion. We picture a population terrified of divine wrath, willing to sacrifice their lives just to appease the heavens. But if you look at the daily records left behind by the working class, this spiritual obedience was actually a strict physical transaction. For the men carving out the royal tombs, the cosmic order of Ma'at did not taste like temple incense. It tasted exactly like their daily guaranteed rations of thick beer and baked wheat. They believed the pharaoh represented ultimate justice, but that justice had to appear on their dinner tables every single evening. If the ruler failed to provide the food, the divine agreement was instantly broken. This is not a modern assumption. We have the exact written complaints from the workers themselves. Deep in the artisans' village of Deir el-Medina, archaeologists recovered scattered fragments of inscribed pottery known as ostraca. These clay shards contain the daily logs of the elite laborers who were actively carving the Valley of the Kings. During the 29th year of Ramses III's reign, the royal storehouses ran empty and the monthly shipments of wheat and beer completely stopped. The workers did not fall to their knees in prayer to the sun god. Instead, they dropped their bronze chisels, marched out of the sacred necropolis, and staged the first recorded labor strike in human history. They marched directly to the mortuary temples and shouted at the local magistrates, declaring their hunger and thirst. Insightfully, they viewed the living god on the throne not as an untouchable tyrant, but as a wealthy employer who had simply failed to meet his payroll. The workers flatly refused to lift another stone until their arrears of grain were fully paid. The royal officials panicked and eventually delivered the missing rations to get the men back to the quarries. Submission in this ancient society was never unconditional. It was a clear, calculated exchange of brutal physical labor for basic physical survival. This massive civilization did not stand for 3,000 years because of magical curses or the sheer willpower of divine kings. It endured because it managed the largest, most effective logistics and supply chain of the ancient world. The true triumph of the pharaohs was not convincing the population that they were immortal gods. Their ultimate triumph was figuring out exactly how to feed millions of citizens in the middle of a barren desert, century after century. When the food stopped, the eternity stopped with it.